So this is a little bit of a weird one to talk about. Let me just say that when I walked into this about as blind as it's possible to be. I know about the Divinity series. I've played Divinity Original Sin. In fact, I love the hell out of that game. I never actually got to finish it because I refused to play it solo. But you know me, I love me some good co-op, and that was some good co-op fun. And I knew that it was requested by the Rumination, and I could infer things. I mean, it's called Commander, so there's probably some kind of war game thing. And because RTS is the most common type of war game, it was probably an RTS game. That was it. That's all I knew walking into it. I'm like, okay. So I start playing it. Colored me wonderfully surprised at how fun of a game this is. Let me just go ahead and start by saying I do recommend this game. It's fun. It's got several aspects of things that I rather enjoy, which I'm going to talk about. Obviously, for a game like this, most of my notes are going to be more gameplay-oriented than they are story-oriented. There's not a whole lot of story to talk about. You know, there's a few characters which are colorfully done. There's a little bit of backstory and setting. There is, of course, the laying up for the series. This is the first actual game in the Divinity series in terms of timeline, and is actually referenced several times in the future, as most notably in Divinity 2. But, oh, excuse me. That's basically it, right? Oh, damn it, hang on. So, and when I saw the intro thing, now, of course, I've played Divinity Original Sin, and I'm very much looking forward to Divinity Original Sin 2, by the way. Really looking forward to that one. I was kind of expecting some comedic tone. What I was not expecting was basically a full-on comedic launch. There is some seriousness to this game, absolutely, but it is done with such a lighthearted overall kind of a tone to almost as it almost be ridiculous. Even lines that should be horrifying aren't. Lines that should be horrifying instead are played off and treated with proper voice acting and proper directing to be just ridiculous and almost whimsical. I do have a lot of praise for the dialogue construction in this game in general, and the voice acting. Both of them did a really good job of getting across a point, which is the next thing I want to talk about. Obviously, there's some big aesthetics with regards to this game. The steampunk thing is all over the place, and there's this sort of kind of rock guitar thing going on with regards to the music. And the graphics themselves look copy-paste out of Dawn of War, but we'll get into that in a minute. But the aesthetic I want to talk about most is the dialogue. This is not a form of aesthetic I've really had a chance to actually discuss. I've brought it up briefly when it came to Chrono Trigger. I've brought it up when it came to Final Fantasy IX, and a few other tidbits. It's most of the times when a game is constructed, dialogue is written to be functional. It's kind of the difference between eating like a very healthy but flavorless meal and eating a very healthy but flavorful meal. Yes, it's possible to have a good tasting healthy meal, I swear. The former is what you usually see in fiction. The vast majority of fiction involves writing that is functional, gets across the point, you know, fills out the characters, fills out the dialogue, you know, it's there. But the dialogue in this game, it's not the best dialogue I've ever seen written, but it had a very distinct flavor to it. And there's a lot of patterning to it. And I'm not good enough with language to really explain what it is I was seeing, but the patterns were there. If you just listen to the dialogue, if you listen to the way the words are constructed, and the sentences and how they fit in comparison to the other sentences, there's a clear pattern there. And I like that aesthetic. It really added to the overall enjoyment of the game. I would also say that if not for the thing that I'll talk about in a bit, the Mass Effect effect, if you will, then I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this game that much. The actual RTS battles were fun, but most of the reason they were fun was because A, they're a type of gameplay I enjoy, talk about that later, and B, they were kind of quick. This was not a StarCraft kind of a thing, or Warcraft 3 with large, you know, multi-hour battles. This is like a 20-minute nuke and blitz kind of a situation. Later on, when I really started refining my tactics, I could get a single battle down to about the 5-minute mark if I really tried. And then, of course, there's the board game aspect, which I'm going to talk about all this stuff later, I swear, which is fun, but ultimately, basically, if it was just the RTS and the board game, it'd basically just be playing a total war game. And that's fine, but that's not going to engage me long term. I need just a little bit more meat. For me personally, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone or speak ill of anyone who prefers that kind of thing. The interactions on the ship, that was the extra meat for me, the extra flavor. The politics, the interacting with the generals and talking to them and encouraging them to work with each other or encouraging them to be dicks towards each other. Little bits of story and flavor you get from everyone. The fact that you can choose the princess, which actually I hated doing, but whatever. And then, their personal quest line you can go through. All that stuff added so much more to the game for me, which I'm going to go ahead and talk about the next thing here. So I fell in love with the setting overall. The multiple races thing, the steampunk aesthetic. There's a great thing that you probably haven't even seen unless you're really paying attention. There's a bar wench aboard the Raven, your command ship, right? Now you're like, okay, why are you bringing this up, Lore? Well, she, of course, has a large bust. Well, I'm bringing this up because it's relevant, okay? See, the thing is, she's undead. She has no mammary glands. She has a skeleton. But she still has the dress. So to make the dress fit on her, because, the bar wench thing is designed for this, she has a pumpkin over here and a bell pepper over here. That's awesome. And of course it's done for flavor and for fun, but at the same time it does speak to the kind of setting this is. The undead are a race in this setting. They are a people with their own culture and their own perspectives and all that fun stuff. Now, they're slanted heavily in this particular game because of reasons I'll talk about in a minute. Screw it, I'll talk about it now. See, each race actually doesn't really represent their race that much, so much as they represent one of the common ideals of a 4X game. It's the 4X light thing. We've got the religious aspect, the environmental aspect, the economic aspect, the diplomatic aspect, and the science aspect. And saying it like that, you could probably think of a dozen 4X games or grand strategy games right off the top of your head that have those concepts in some format or another in them, right? So the undead are the religious, the elves are the environmental, the dwarves are the economy, the lizards are the diplomatic, and the imps are the science. Makes sense, right? It kind of made things interesting, too, because I kind of wanted to get along with people more, and basically, anytime you choose to be in favor of one side, you lose favor with the others. It's a very balance of power situation. And so you have a choice, and I kind of like this. You can have a lot of support with one or two of the races, which will really help you out in battles in their territories, or you can try to keep everyone basically balanced, which means everyone's going to be hovering between 40 and 60%. And because every time you make a choice, it'll go like this and this and this. And like this person will approve, but these will disapprove. But then this one will approve, and these ones will disapprove, and so forth and so on. It's a balancing act if you want to do that, which is what I did, consequently. Playing politics, if you will, trying to stay at least moderately popular. I had a whole role-playing thing going along about how I was, rather than bringing in external troops, I was recruiting militia on the fly. Because, of course, in the map, you can train units in the map, right? So that was just my lore explanation for that. And I justified that by saying that I had somehow managed to balance all the races into some level of equality, some level of respect, so that they all were willing to take up arms and fight alongside me as long as I provide them the material and the troops. Or not the troops, the equipment, which I did, of course. So I liked that. The generals, of course, had their own thing. Naturally, the generals kind of were put into two camps. There's Henry and Scarlet over here, and there's Edmund and Catherine over here. Of them, I actually ended up liking Scarlet the best, believe it or not. But that's probably because of the fact that Edmund is an ass, and Henry has no class, and Catherine likes lots of sass. There we go. We kept it going. I don't have much to say about those characters, unfortunately. I don't have much to say about the princesses either. I will say this. I didn't want to pick a princess. I really didn't. The fact that I was being forced into marriage for political reasons, however, was spot on with what we were going with. And fully and completely fit the overall tone of where this was going. It's like, I will save the world, but the implication is you can't just walk up as a hero. That's why this is Dragon Commander, as opposed to, say, Dragon Knight or Dragon Hero or whatever. Dragon Hero, so like dragons are flying along and you gotta hit the buttons in the right. So, you don't have a choice. You have to undergo a marriage. And it can be for political reasons, or it can be for personal reasons, or it can be because you're interested in their story. There's all sorts of reasoning to do that, and I like that. It's actually well written. I ended up choosing God, I didn't even write down her name. Lizard. I can't think of her name. It was like Camila or something like that. Anyways, I chose the lizard woman because this is a purely political marriage, and so having political ties with the lizards was something that was important to me at the time. And to be blunt, she was the only one of the princesses who was flat out, bluntly honest with me right up front. And I don't want to marry any of these women. This is a purely political thing. And she walks up and says, okay, we'll be together politically. And that's it. And there will never be anything else there. And that's kind of what I wanted. Okay, here's your title. Bye. Now, I did end up going through her campaign, of course, if you can call it that, with the whole lawyer thing. She has an interesting view of law, I'm just going to say that. But I did watch several of the other campaigns with Ophelia and her ability to either become human or become a robot or become a vampire. Interesting set of choices there. Lohana, that was her name, which was interesting because Lohana struck me as much more the political person, someone who was trying to be a pragmatic individual, someone who's trying to embrace the political machinations of being queen. Ida? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I didn't have much for her. She's basically just all about her father. And while Lord knows that is an engaging character thing in its own right, that's not really queen material and therefore not something I would have picked in general. And then there's, of course, the imp princess, whose name is Whoops! Some of you will get that. So that's about all I have to say about the characters. Maxos isn't really that fleshed out. Corvus is interesting. In fact, Corvus is very interesting in the fact that he represents something like basically it is presented as if he is effectively a genie, as in your typical Aladdin style, not the Jinn of more, say, Forgotten Realms thing. He can basically grant wishes. He has tremendous power, but there are restrictions, rules, laws, bindings, etc. that retract him and remove his ability to completely unearth that power, right? And you can, for those of you know, where you can sacrifice your wives to him. All of them, actually. You can sacrifice every single one of your wives to him, and he will gladly gobble them up and give you some cards and some benefit for it. And he will also get stronger each time you do that. And yeah, you do end up fighting him in the end. Duh. I mean, who didn't call that? And some people, I've actually found some interesting things in discussion threads, because some people think bargains with Corvus are mandatory. Not because you need the benefit, but because you need the challenge, because you want him to be stronger in the end. Some people think it's absolutely abhorrent. That would be me, by the way. Dealings with demons is not something I generally try to do. It's funny because I've been playing the Burning Legion, expansion for a while recently, and I keep seeing characters who are like, we will join with the Legion. I'm like, why? And then there's some people who think that not only is dealing with the demon mandatory, but you should do it in a degree of moderation, because basically as long as you don't do too much, he only gets a few benefits and you only get a few benefits, so it kind of balances out. I will say the overall design and visual thing and the writing, again, top-notch for Corvus. Very, very well fleshed out. So in general, I just have nothing but praise for the characters, limited though they be. As I said, I liked the politics style of thing, the politics minigame, if you want to call it that. Ultimately, it seems to have very, very little gameplay benefit, but I'm okay with that. Again, that was flavor to the meat. Like I was using in my earlier analogy. Well, let's talk about the Mass Effect thing, as I mentioned. So first of all, I want you to picture, those of you who played this game, and those of you who played Mass Effect, imagine a Mass Effect game made like this. See, the thing is, that's kind of what this is. Hear me out. Mass Effect, in overall approach, is a third-person shooter, whichever one you're playing, and involves, the usual going to missions and going to accomplish stuff, blah, blah. It's an RPG, but its approach to its gameplay style is the third-person action shooter, right? And then, of course, you go back to your ship and you go to the Citadel and you talk to people and you get more of their story, blah, blah, blah. Now, obviously, Mass Effect has much more of the talk-to-people thing, but every time I finished a mission in Dragon Commander, I kept thinking of the Mass Effect thing. I can't wait to get back to the ship and talk to all my people again and see what new things they have to say. It was the exact same thing from the ME, the Mass Effect thing. KOTOR kind of did that a little bit. It's kind of a BioWare thing in general, because also Dragon Age did that a bit, if you're paying attention. So, basically the only strong difference, other than duration and debates of quality, which we're not going to go into, is the fact that rather than going down to a third-person action RPG, you were going down to an RTS. in between the ship sections. So again, imagine doing an RTS 4X kind of a game where with Mass Effect style cutscenes in between. You've kind of got the gameplay, and of course, then I think that would work great for a Mass Effect game. I was trying to describe the gameplay of this game overall as I went through it. I came up with a few parallels: Total Annihilation, Empire at War, Dawn of War, of course, and most Paradox games. I feel like this is a light version of basically all of those. The Dawn of War series, of course, is probably the most strongly felt because the bulk of the gameplay is the RTS section. And that is how it is. You capture resource points, which give you a slow trickle up to a finite cap of resources. You have to plan ahead in some cases. You can build production facilities, but only on nodes. Again, Empire at War basically did the exact same thing. You can build little turrets and whatnot on little things. It is basically copy-paste from that overall playstyle. I should say Empire at War it's copy-paste from. Dawn of War varied it a little bit between the initial expansions. I liked that, but it was ultimately kind of dull, with one huge exception. And that's the fact that you can play as your freaking dragon. I'm sorry. No, you can play as a dragon with a jetpack. I'm going to say that one more time in case you missed it. You can play as a dragon with a jetpack. The way it happens is so smooth. The controls in this game are phenomenal. The UE, I have zero complaints. This is one of the best designed UEs for this kind of thing I've seen in a while. You switch to dragon form straight out of the camera. So like wherever your camera view is, that's where your dragon form is. You can only do it around your own units. But then once you do it, you can fly around all willy-nilly. You have very limited ability to control your units, and basically no ability to control your buildings or production while you're in dragon form. That's the trade-off. So generally, you're encouraged to basically give orders and then switch to dragon form and support. But at the same time, you can fully dragon form a map. It's possible. I've done it. You can fully RTS a map. In fact, there's an achievement for it where you don't go to dragon form at all. And you can do any mix in between. And because of the way the research works, you can set up your dragon however you want. You can make the dragon basically an elite unit. This is where the Total Annihilation parallel comes in with the commanders. For those of you who haven't played Total Annihilation, you've probably played Supreme Commander, same thing, or Planetary Annihilation, I think, is the recent one. Which, again, same thing. So your commander can be basically played as this super elite unit that just obliterates everything and costs 20 currency, 20 reinforcements every time you summon him. Or you can play him as pure support and get him stacked up with tons of auras and buffs and heals in order to basically be right behind your army as it's going. Or you can do anything in between. There's actually a lot of fluidity in how you play the dragon. I've heard some people say this game gets a little bit too easy because of the dragon thing, but I never really actually felt that personally, because it never stopped being fun. There was so much possibility and so many different ways to play through the RTS sections that I feel that added a very necessary component of vitality to the mix, the variety it added, Because if it was just the top-down, Empire at War style thing, that would have gotten old. The dragon added a critical element to it and was tons and tons of fun, and I loved the hell out of it. Also, the way I played him, for anybody curious, I had him as pretty much pure support with a little bit of glass cannoniness. I had a couple of big attacks and not much in the way of defense, but he's very maneuverable, so that was fun. Then, of course, there's the other thing. So this is kind of an Empire at War clone with a dragon mixed in, which would make Empire at War a lot of fun, actually. Imagine just playing like not a dragon, like a Star Destroyer or something. Anyways, except you can't play a Star Destroyer in Empire at War. Imagine a Paradox game, grand strategy, It's got shades of that too, but the more I thought about it, the more I think that doesn't really fit. Because again, the politics thing, that's much more a Mass Effect thing. That's much more the interacting with the people and seeing the consequences, and there's branching storylines for several of those arcs too. No, I think the game that I could most parallel this to is no video game at all. It's a board game. When you actually go to the map, not the RTS map, not the ship, the in-between thing, the territories map, first of all, it's really well done, but it feels in every way like a board game. In fact, even the moving of the pieces is basically moving pawns around on a board game. And if you pay attention, I didn't notice this at first, on each province, actually scrawled in the province, not a UE, not a feature of the UI, but in each little province there's like a little icon showing which faction it belongs to. There's a number showing how many population are there, and you can see how much money and how much research it produces. So you don't even have to check the interface if you don't want to. It's just right there on the board, just like it would be on a board game. It's very complicated for a board game, of course, but it is basically a board game, and I love that. That's not an insult. I love me some tactical war-based board games. I played the heck out of Imperial, for example. Um, so, or I would if I owned a copy, but I should say played, past tense, the heck out of Imperial. I really need to get a hold of that copy someday. And and you can move the pieces around. It's not just to province. Like if you want to move it to a province, gameplay wise, it doesn't matter where in that province that unit is, but you can move them like here, 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 here. It doesn't matter. You can do however you want. I used to do that to like remind myself of where my units were going. This fleet is going this way, and this troop is going this way, and that way I would have a direction for it. It was a lot of fun. I really liked the board game side of it. I really liked the RTS/Dragon side of it, and I really liked the Mass Effect side of it. All three aspects of this game were great. I loved this game, and it's such a shame that it doesn't, near as I could tell, it doesn't seem to have a proper co-op feature. It does have a multiplayer mode, but it appears to be versus only, which kind of sucks. It looked like I could maybe play with teammates, maybe, I'm not sure, I wasn't able to figure that out. But I couldn't do it with the AI, for example. That wasn't possible. Let me check my notes, because I think I've kind of covered everything. I don't have too much to say. It's a great game in terms of sheer fun. I don't have a lot lore-wise to talk about, obviously. As I mentioned, this is basically a lead-up to the rest of the Divinity series, this being the thing where demonic technology, aka the steampunk tech, is removed from the setting, wiped out. It's an interesting goal. Your goal is not just conquering the world, your goal is removing the weapons of war from the world. It's kind of like waging a nuclear war, and then once you win, getting rid of all the nukes, except slightly less devastating. And I found that fascinating. And there are a few aspects of this game that I did notice from playing Divinity Original Sin, and I hope to see other inferences in from other games. I'm checking over my notes here, but I don't think I have anything else to share. So I guess that's it. Good game, great game. I'd probably play it more if I had the time. And I guess that's it. Looking forward to Divinity Original Sin 2. There we go. Looking forward to that. That's supposedly coming out like in a few months here. Anyways, we'll see you around, guys.